Welcome to the Dispatch. You're listening to a primer on Jammu and Kashmir. Did the Second World War taking place in faraway lands affect Jammu and Kashmir? Let's hear it out in episode 31.
The 1940s opened with a profound sense of uncertainty across the Indian subcontinent. The global shock of the Second World War, the intensification of the freedom movement, and constitutional negotiations between Indian leaders and the British fundamentally reshaped political expectations. For Jammu and Kashmir, a large princely state with a diverse population and a cautious monarchy, this decade marked a period in which internal politics, imperial policy, and regional pressures converged in ways without precedent. The outbreak of the Second World War in 1939 altered the vicinity between the British Crown and the princely states. The Chamber of Princes was consulted, but the princes were expected to support the war effort without question. Maharaja Hari Singh aligned the state with British expectations, contributing troops and resources. Jammu and Kashmir's Dogra regiments, with a long tradition of service in imperial campaigns, were deployed in various theatres, reinforcing the state's profile as a reliable princely ally. Yet the war placed new demands on administration, finances, and internal order, increasing pressure on the state machinery. Meanwhile, the Indian freedom movement entered a more decisive phase. The Quit India movement of 1942, although centered in British India, influenced the political atmosphere within Jammu and Kashmir as well. The National Conference under Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah voiced sympathy with calls for responsible government and civil liberties. Its rhetoric aligned increasingly with the broader nationalist narrative, though it remained within the constitutional limits imposed by the princely order. Public meetings, resolutions, and editorials in the Urdu press reflected a society closely watching events across India and interpreting them through its own political lens. On the administrative front, the 1940s brought sustained debate over the future structure of governance. The Government of India Act of 1935 had envisaged certain reforms for princely states, but their implementation depended on the willingness of individual rulers. In Jammu and Kashmir, demands for a larger legislative role, responsible government, and greater inclusion continued to grow. The Praja Sabha functioned but remained limited in authority. Its members pressed for more substantial powers, particularly over finance and public administration. Social and economic conditions added to the turbulence. Wartime inflation increased the cost of basic goods, affecting both urban and rural populations. In the valley, cultivators struggled with price fluctuations and the pressures of a constrained agrarian economy. In Jammu, trade was affected by disrupted supply chains and rising transportation costs. Frontier districts such as Ladakh and Gilgit felt the impact of wartime geopolitics as British India strengthened its watch on trans-Himalayan routes and border regions. By the mid-1940s, the political alignments within the state had become clearer. The National Conference, advocating secular and regionally inclusive politics, had widened its base while maintaining its core strength in the valley. In Jammu, a range of political groups, Hindu Sabha activists, regional associations, and emerging agrarian voices articulated concerns specific to the region. Each had a different view of the state's political future, reflecting its own social composition and regional experience. The most consequential development, however, was the evolving British policy toward the princely states. As the prospect of Indian independence became inevitable, discussions intensified about the constitutional integration of more than 560 princely states into a new political framework. The British made it increasingly clear that when paramountcy ended, rulers would need to negotiate their future relationships directly with the emerging dominions. This message placed all princely states, including Jammu and Kashmir, in a position that none had faced before. They would soon make a choice that would carry deep and lasting implications. By the close of the decade, Jammu and Kashmir stood on the threshold of this decision. The state had a politically active population, a monarchy facing rising demands for reform, and a geopolitical position that made its future uniquely sensitive. The turbulence of the 1940s did not determine the outcome, but it defined the conditions under which the decisive events of 1947 would unfold. The decade was, in effect, the prelude to the final chapter of princely autonomy.
Thanks for watching this episode of Primer on Jammu and Kashmir. Here is a quick note from the editors of the Dispatch. While dealing with historical events, we are conscious of the fact that history has no single view. In places like Jammu and Kashmir, this can be more complicated. While explaining the events of history through this primer, we are taking the best possible care to be objective and to offer context wherever views differ starkly. We welcome you to write to us and enrich the knowledge base on Jammu and Kashmir.